All right, good afternoon and welcome back, Budget Committee for the County and Service District for Line Number 1. So over to you, Chair Everton, for the call to order.
Thank you. Welcome to the Washington County and SDL Number 1 Budget Committee meeting. We'll call this meeting to order.
Thank you, Chair Everton. Melissa Laird. Here. Commissioner Willie.
Here.
Karen Bolin.
Present.
Chair Harrington.
Here.
Commissioner Treese.
Here.
Sig Eulander. Present. Commissioner Fye.
Present.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Chair Everton. And
Here.
we are expecting member Jeff Sarafa momentarily right now.
What do you look?
Chair, before we get started, could I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Would it be possible to get a copy of the slides for this afternoon's meeting?
I think that's this.
You have it,
Well,
but I don't.
oh, I'm sorry. You can have mine. Oh, here he has his.
No idea. That'd be good. Then the other thing, Chair. Wait, no, this is not for this afternoon. This was for this morning.
It might be the whole thing.
No, the agenda is, but there are no slides in this whole presentation.
The last page.
Aha,
Last couple of pages.
thank you.
Page 27.
So could somebody please take us through all these handouts we were just given, and could we be informed whether or not the packet changed between this morning's meeting and posting and receiving these additional handouts? Because I've not had time to read them yet.
Chair Everton, I can address that question.
Please.
So regarding the Q&A document, so version 2 of that was posted this morning on the website, and version 3 was posted within the last hour, and staff, it's posted on the website, but staff did not have the time to send out a notification email on that.
So is it in the packet, or do we have to get it elsewhere?
We have printed copies of it that has been, I think, has been handed out to everybody.
Okay, so we only have the hard copy, so the public does not have it, is what I'm hearing.
Clerk Moss will work on getting it uploaded to the packet, so the packet is updated. Philip will be working with him. Thank you, Clerk Moss, for doing that.
And Chair, I would make a request that before we go to the public hearing, that we all be given the opportunity to review all of these different handouts before we go to public hearing, so we know what we're going to public hearing about.
Okay,
Go ahead.
okay. So then the other 2 handouts, one is titled Permanent Positions, and it's referencing pages 429 through
433.
434 in the budget document.
These have only been copied single-sided, not double-sided, so we have every other page. Right, goes 429, 431, 433.
We'll reprint those for you, but let me explain why I handed them out real quickly. If you flip to the handouts that you do have on the second page, which is titled 431, and compare that to the document in the budget document, when we transitioned public health, as we talked about in the last couple of days, public health and parks out of the general fund into their own special revenue fund, in the FTE count that's in the budget document, they were erroneously counted twice. So if you're looking in your budget document under Public Health, page 431, under proposed 2425, you'll see a number of 124.66. about a third of the way down the page.
Will you repeat that page number? for me,
Sure,
please?
page 431 in the budget document.
Oh, yeah, 2 line items with different numbers.
So that 124.66 should be 0 because the number is already counted above in the 174 number. So if you look at the handout on page 430, the second page, also number 431, you'll see that it's 0.
So what is the correct number in total for public health?
It's 174.9.
Got it. Which that 16 is included in the 174.9?
Not the 16, the 124.66 is part of the 174.9, but it's duplicated in the budget document. So the 124.66 in the budget document should be 0 because it's already counted in the number above that, the 174.9. The same is true if you drop down to the bottom section for parks. You'll see a 10 for parks. That should be 0 because parks is now moved from the general fund to their own fund.
Got it.
So those are the two-
Following that Fund 189 for public health, the active org number now is 1897030, and then for parks, the active number account will be 4333560.
That's correct, yep. So the bottom line, in the bottom of that page, in the budget document, it shows 2,578.04 FTE. The correct number is on the handout, which is 2,442.63.
So did you just give us the pages that changed?
That's the only page that's changed, but we intended to print the entire FTE roster out as a duplicate.
So 431 is the only one that matters.
Yeah. We can reprint them for you if you'd like the entire page, or what's important is this 431 page.
We're good. I think we're good.
The only other thing I need to verify, the number under total health and human services, and then the one after that, in the published book, does the 555.66 stay the same?
No, that is 431 on the handout, and 559.75 replaces 684.16.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and reprint the entire schedule because there's a couple pages in the back that the summaries didn't pick up that change that I think will be important, so we'll just have a complete new set to give to you. That's the first document. The second document is, it's titled Washington County Exhibit A, May 17th, 2024. It looks like a budgetary debits and credits. Looks like this. So this is a proposed amendment to the budget by staff. It's a technical amendment. It doesn't change the overall requested budget amount or proposed budget amount. It just moves some of the dollars between contingency and expenditures. This was discovered late.
And what, oh, yeah, okay.
These are in the insurance funds.
Premiums. These aren't claims, these are premiums.
They are part of, these are just part of the expenditures. I don't know if it's premium or it's claim costs.
Well, the paragraph at the bottom explains it.
Okay,
It doesn't say that it's,
Proposed in life insurance, long-term
yeah,
disability insurance payments.
yep.
but that doesn't tell you, but that doesn't tell you if it's premium or claim. Payment is not specified. I would like to know if it's a premium.
Premium or claims.
Or claim.
Okay,
Let's be clear.
we'll get that before.
What's the payment for?
we'll get that before we get to the approval.
And when we go later in the budget process, do we need to get a motion on the table and then amend the motion to include that technical?
So the motion, we can insert, approve the budget as proposed, plus the technical amendment presented. So we'll insert a little, 3 or 4 words into the motion.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that was the extent of the handouts that I had.
The letter will come back to.
Later.
With the public hearing part,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
I'm looking at Ms. Angie.
Yeah, let's reference the letter that's in front of you. And I apologize, I gave my letter to Ms. Kyle, so thank you, committee member Laird, for me being able to, oh, okay, thanks. We've got letters flying. I want to point out just what this letter speaks to. As the committee is aware, we are moving out public health and related functions out of the general fund. As we work through the budget process, there was discussion about and consideration, should we have a contingency, fully funded contingency for that move? The county, and I spoke to this earlier in our committee process, and we did verify with our financial auditor that is not needed. Part of the concern is timing of state grants, when revenues come in, and expenditures. So staff will be monitoring this throughout the year. This is the same as parks, so those funds may run into a deficit during the calendar year. If there needs to be any kind of shoring, I am not a CPA or a CFO, so my words, shoring up of that fund, we will handle that through the budget supplemental process, that there may need to be like a one-time transfer into that fund of general fund reserves to help make sure that the funds are whole at the end of the fiscal year. And we, once again, verified this, that this is an acceptable practice with our financial auditor.
And I'd also like to note that the top of the letter says it's from the Washington County Public Health Advisory Council. So the last line in the signature block is, it's not coming from our staff from Health and Human Services Public Health Division. I think that's a incorrect line in the signature.
Chair Harrington, can you explain what the Public Health Advisory Council is compared to the Health and Human Services leadership team?
So Washington County Health and Human Services Public Health Division is our staff from the Public Health Division, okay? The Public Health Advisory Council is a board and commission appointed through the course. If we go to our website and looked under Board of Commissions, you would find a Public Health Advisory Committee, and this includes folks from throughout the community who advise this division as well as the board on the work of public health. So the signature block makes it look like our own management staff is represented in this letter, but that's not what the letter content says.
Thank you. And I think the letterhead also makes it look like it's an official Washington County publication. So is that something to address as well?
An official county board, they should just get their own letterhead.
Or no letterhead.
Or no letterhead. In the SPD, we have our own letterhead. The advisory committee. So when are we dealing with this?
Sorry, I have a question. Karen, you can go first.
So I didn't hear an answer. When are we dealing with this letter? Now or later?
Yeah, that's
So what does all that mean?
The letter is part of the public test, it's been submitted as part of the public testimony. I wanted to provide from a staff perspective context as you review the materials in front of you.
So their concern is the bills won't get paid unless this money's available, and you're saying that's not a problem. Okay, got it. Moving on.
All right, thanks for all these
Oh,
materials.
Wait, there's more.
This is the corrected print.
That's all the pages. right?
All the pages. Okay, got it.
Thank you.
You might want to check.
And I will follow Steve, and I will pull your incorrect packages, the one-sided copies, so there's not confusion.
That's the one I marked up. Okay, so 431. This changed.
Yep.
This changed. This changed. Done. Okay.
Can I jump in one last time?
Please, yeah.
Okay, we just clarified, Ms. Boland, the question was on this technical amendment, whether they were claims expenditure, increases for claims expenditures or for premium expenditures, and we confirmed it's for premium.
Premium, okay. Thank you.
We must be getting close. The answers are coming quicker.
But we still have,
Then we have this big fat thing. Oh my gosh.
we
Only
had
the
the
last
white
couple.
stuff after
Okay.
meeting number 1.
Yes, I saw that.
So the blue stuff
Is
is
the new.
what's new to all of us.
Okay.
Do.
How does this work? Do we need to schedule some time to view it, or?
This is a lot.
I'm just thinking that that it might be helpful for us to read these, take a little time to read these, the blue answers. Otherwise, we may have questions along the way, which,
Would scheduling a break be enough? We don't currently have a break scheduled, so we could schedule one.
I'm just trying to read right now.
Chair, that is your prerogative to say that we'll take a 10 or 15-minute break to allow the committee time to review the Q&A.
Okay. Chair, do you think 15 or 30 would be enough?
I would say, I've read all the white ones already.
Okay.
So I'm hoping 15 minutes would get me through the blue. But what do the other committee
Anybody else
members
want 30, or is 15 good?
I think 15's good.
15's good.
If we need more, we'll ask for more. How about that?
Okay.
So Chair Clerk Moss can put up the timer for 15 minutes, and then the committee can review if that's enough time. As just a reminder, it's only the blue that is new, the white, or the Q&A that the committee has already received.
Okay, so we're going to do that right now? Just under 2 minutes left. Okay, time's up, pencils down.
Teacher, I need more time.
Sorry, it's the reality I've been living. So, does anybody need more time?
I just need a couple.
Couple more minutes? Yeah, a couple more, please. Okay. Can we put 2 more minutes on, please? Thanks. Okay, do we have any discussion on the Q&A? Any more questions about them? Okay. Do we want to, are you saying we want to discuss those now or later?
You're the chair, whatever you want to do, but I mean,
Okay.
there's some questions that I have that I want to bring up.
I just have one question that I'll need to have explained verbally.
Okay. Do we want to handle these before we move on to the STL? Would that make the most sense flow-wise? Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'll have to look in my budget book on the extension service budget page. Anybody remembers what page this is? I'll look at it on the electronic.
309.
309. So we had questions about how the dollars are used for extension, and I understand what the answer is enumerating from a program standpoint, but I'm trying to understand with what is being budgeted on this page, what do we actually think we're investing in or giving authorization to invest in?
So that's a great question, and we're getting confirmation of the details, but I'll tell you what we know so far is that the number at the top, the 176,843.
Yep.
That's our cost allocation plan that in this case is allocating facilities, finance, and technology, so internal service funds. Those costs, the sum of those through the allocation plan equal the 176 number. And the 391 number, I believe, is the personnel side to fund the extension personnel side. And I'm going to look around, and is that correct? Okay, we talked about this yesterday. Yeah. That would be included in the 176,843.
The lease.
So when we had this discussion either, I had a note, lease payment for office space identified as part of the other expenses. But it's not, it's in materials and services.
We lease the facility for them.
Yeah, right.
So that's how the cost allocation covers that need,
I just had it in the wrong file. Thank you.
That would make sense, but I'm not entirely sure.
as I understand it.
And then other is personnel?
Others personnel, the 391's personnel.
I want to draw the committee's attention to the second part of that answer, which is on page 34 of your Q&A. And I'm actually just going to read it out loud for members who are in the audience or online. If the proposed budget is approved for next year, and this is talking about the extension, Washington County will enter into a formal contract with OSU Extension where scope of work, deliverables, including outcomes and report scheduled to be aligned. This is also in response to some questions. Well, it may not be fully reflected in this Q&A that some committee members had just interest in understanding why we're contracting with OSU for certain services, and actually we're under the understanding that most of those funds were going to 4-H versus other extension activities. So that full scope of work in relationship with OSU will be further outlined in a formal contract, which we currently do not have. This is something that the county, we've been working on as a county, contracting directly for services with partners or CBOs versus just general grant dollars going out.
Could I ask a follow-up question about OSU Extension? We heard in testimony yesterday that there's a $21,000 shortfall in the budget, which is identified on page 309 of the budget summary book. And we heard in the testimony explanation about the great work that that group is doing. If it's possible to make a proposal to cover that, I know every department's affected by a 5% budget cut, but if I turn what I just read in the blue part of the Q&A from today, right below OSU Extension, is that in the non-departmental section of the budget for the Association of Oregon Counties, for dues, we expect to save $22,000 from what the budgeted amount is versus forecasted amount. Meaning budgeted amount is 160,000. We have a forecast in the commentary of the answer of 22,000 of savings. So could we apply that 22,000 of savings to the OSU extension?
So our budget process does not align in the same calendar timeline that AOC approves their dues each year. So AOC works, we're on fiscal year, AOC is on calendar year. So generally for that due line item, for example, we budget actually a bit of a cushion because we have not seen consistent AOC rates for years. If there is if the AOC dues do not come up to that 160 level, those dollars fall back into fund balance contingency. And then the board, if the board does, we have twice per year budget supplemental. So during a budget supplemental, there could be additional appropriations for a program or services. Typically, any new additional, those appropriations typically are reflective of increasing grant revenues or new dollars coming in.
Okay, so I don't know enough about, the supplemental process to know the mechanisms of reallocation of budget funds, and coming from industry, it's a lot faster process. So I guess I'll ask the question differently. Is it possible in the budget summary to do any reallocations of what's in the budget summary based on the discussion that comes out of the budget committee meetings that we're in?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The whole point of the game.
So then my ask would be, can you make the budget 142,000 for AOC dues and apply, I forgot the right number. Well, yeah, 142,913, and shift 22,000 to OSU extension to cover their shortfall.
So I would just like to, extensions, so the answer is yes, that would be a budget amendment brought forward by the budget committee, because the budget committee ultimately is in charge of moving forward a proposed budget. Extensions testimony yesterday, I think, resonates with me as an individual and many of our employees and partners. We are in the space of year-over-year cuts. So that 10% reduction last year, the 5% reduction this year, every department in this county, many of our partner organizations actually have now fully reduced funding with the county. So I just want to express appreciation for the partnership with Extension and just the challenging strain that we're experiencing throughout.
Okay. Yeah, I understand there's trade-offs we have to make across the board, and there's a small piece of the pie, and a lot of departments are affected equally, and this would make it not equal if OSU Extension was granted relief and others weren't. It just seemed like kind of a nice application of where the dollars matched up. So that's why I proposed it.
The other thing I'd like to comment on as a board member is that we have been aware for at least 3 or 4 years now that there were many CBOs that were receiving, as Ms. Angie articulated, just direct payments from us. And we didn't know what we were buying, okay? This is as much clarity as we've gotten in a long time, but there's still no contract for such services. So there's still need for improvement, and we only, like you've already recognized, we only have so much money to go around. And so if we proceed with this as proposed, then they're going to have to make adjustments in terms of their program. They've gotten ahead of our budget in terms of what we can actually contribute. I don't know if that's going to mean they have to find a way to balance out from a different source of theirs to cover those personnel, or they're going to have to reduce the number of students that they're able to handle. But that will be up to them based upon what it is we are able to invest.
And since with this budget cycle, we will get that contract, we'll know exactly how much the money we have budgeted goes for, and then one of these supplemental budgets could adjust it if there looks to be a need for a change, but we'll know because we have the contract and we know what we're supporting, what we're buying.
Okay, thank you. Those are all good points.
And I'll also say on the AOC budget, we are one of the larger counties by population, and there are many rural counties that have smaller tax rates than we do, but they look to us as though we're swimming in dollars, even though our net general fund resources is only around 265 million for various general government and whatnot. But they're further away from our budget than we all are. So it's really difficult to get AOC recognition that we can't year over year carry a 5 or 10% increase on our dues. It's very hard. So that's one reason why, not this calendar year, but the year before, we said, we can't pay this increase. And they said, sorry, the best we can do is give you a deferral on that payment, so we're paying 1/4 of that increase for the next 4 years. But I'm afraid we're being set up this year for at least a 10% increase in dues.
It's also, if I may jump in here, it's also important as we look at these things, while we understood from the Extension Service and their testimony what the perceived value might be, the Budget Committee doesn't have the same insight into what we depend on from AOC. And things like they are one of our primary advocates for unfunded and underfunded mandates, state mandates. So it's really hard to say, well, let's just do this and put it over here without understanding the whole picture as well. But I appreciate your thoughtfulness in bringing it forward.
Thank you.
I think there were other questions about these answers. Did you have one, Commissioner Rogers?
I have a couple of things that I would like to talk about, but let's talk about procedurally today. Are you trying to do the street lighting and the county budget at the same time, or would you like to take the street lighting? We can get rid of that one pretty quick, I think, in terms of process, and then come back and answer a few questions. I know you've got them blended, and they're two different things.
Any slot in here.
What would we like to do? Would we like to do SCL first and then have more questions?
Mr. Chairman, my suggestion is that we deal with the street lighting and see if there's any questions, pass that out, and if there's some questions remaining or adjustments. I mean, we're hearing an adjustment on the county side. I have a couple of things I want to bring up, but I'd love to do the street lighting first, see if there's any public testimony, pass it on. And
okay, that works for me. Any concerns from anybody? Okay. A couple things before we do that then. Commissioner Treese reminded me that she brought cookies, so they're over on that table.
And they're available for everybody. I don't want to take them home, please.
Help yourself. Thank you, Commissioner Treese. And also, Ms. Angie, you had something you wanted to...
So there are 49 pages of answers to the questions your budget committee had submitted. I just want to take a moment and give a huge shout out and appreciation for Washington County staff on the really quick turnaround on these question and answers. I will say myself, I was up at 6 a.m. approving answers to many of these. So it's important that we get the best information in your hands, and we do recognize that there wasn't enough time for reading the material, and so we'll make note of that in next year's process for the turnaround.
But we did get 35 pages of answers at the end of day one.
Correct.
So, and I know we were asked to get our questions in as early as possible. So it wasn't, we only had 2 weeks to study the whole thing. So I think there was a great rallying by staff to do this. And the answers are tremendous. But we're also being asked to rally pretty hard too.
And Chair, I think what I was trying to keep in my response is recognize that as well in your schedule.
Yeah. If you didn't say I was going to, that's remarkable how quickly the turnaround is. We're struggling to keep up, which is fantastic. Nice work. Okay, with that, let's see, shall I turn it over to
Stephen Roberts.
Stephen Roberts
according
for
to the agenda.
yeah, for SCL number 1, budget presentation?
This and that don't, this and the slides don't match.
Okay.
This time you'll have to hear from me today.
Maybe.
And those of you who are repeat Budget Committee members, you'll notice this is not Sheila Giambrone sitting next to me. Sheila was our longtime Administrative Services Division Manager who manages the overall budget process for our department, which is a fairly large and complex budget. I'm joined today by Mark Adams. Mark is our interim Senior Administrative Services Division Manager, so he's taken on that role. And he and his team have done a really good job getting the budget pulled together today. So we're here just to give you a really quick overview of the budget for the Service District for Lighting number 1, which, as you noted earlier, is sort of rolled into the larger countywide budget. Or I should say that you serve as the budget committee for both this very small district, but also for the overall budget committee. And I'll just note before Mark takes off here that the budget for this district starts on page 414 in your budget summary book if you want to follow along. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, get the clicker.
I was going to say, who's advancing the slides?
You are.
You are.
Look at that.
You've got the power.
Okie dokie. I'm going to just see how this works. That's how that works. So again, yes, I am not Sheila Giambrone, and I appreciate all of her years of service to the department, and she's definitely left large shoes to fill. And as I was reviewing her presentation on SDL a year ago, she was acknowledging the empty chair next to her, which would have been Stacia Shelar. And Stacia is still with the county, but unfortunately she's been out on medical leave for the last couple of weeks. And so I think that given the transition, I would probably be leaning very heavily on Stacia to support this presentation today. But here we are. This presentation's
Chair, we're in good hands.
presentation's very largely in keeping with what was given a year ago in terms of the equity considerations for the Service District for Lighting. I know that we do make efforts to provide language access services to anybody who reaches out requesting streetlights or asking questions to make sure we meet community members wherever they're at in that regard. Excuse me. And this map, which I'm sure is way too small for everybody to exactly make out, so the street lighting, the Service District for Lighting provides street lighting services for the areas outside of the cities, and the orange areas you see on that map are the SDL assessment areas. And the lighter gray areas are the cities within the county. And then you, just for reference, you can also see in the darker gray where there's urban growth boundary areas that exist but are not served by the SDL. So people make requests to be served by the Service District for Lighting. And if they submit a request and it's approved by 50% of the property owners within that district, well, then it moves forward. But it does require 50% approval of everybody who's impacted by a new service district. The costs that are passed along to the customers or the citizens who participate in this are in proportion to the costs of providing the service to the benefited properties. So it's the electricity costs, it's the cost of setting up a pole, it's the cost of the staff person for Washington County Statia who supports this program. And these costs are collected by way of the property tax bill. And as I mentioned, this program is administered by the LUT admin division staff person of Statia who supports this year-round and has been doing this a long time. This program helps developers, it helps property owners, as they are paying for the electricity and for the poles themselves. And I've already touched on the 50% support required. Moving to the next slide. So this lays out for you the fact that the number of streetlights and tax lots and assessment areas is in keeping with the growth we've seen in the last few years. In this slide, you'll see that we're looking at 12,885 streetlights are part of the service districts. There's 48,145 tax lots, which is property owners who are impacted, and there are 1,286 assessment areas. So every year we look at one particular assessment area and make sure the costs for that assessment area are being borne by that assessment area. Also, I want to say that most property owners typically pay somewhere between $20 to $30 a year for this service. It's not a large cost, and when it's set up, the maximum cost they would pay is initially set up to be double the initial cost. So every once in a while we get to where the actual costs have caught up to that maximum cost, and we have to have another hearing to reset what that maximum cost will be. We have such hearings every year, and you'll be having some hearings to that effect next month as well, because that continues to happen.
The Board of Commissioners will.
The Board of Commissioners will. Thank you. So yes, if the projected costs will be exceeding the maximum, a public notification goes out to the impacted property owners, and there's going to be a hearing, and it'll be required by the board to be approved. This slide shows the previous year's actuals and the budgeted revenues and expenditures. We're looking at revenues of a little over $3 million and expenditures of just about $2.7 million, and a contingency projected to increase up to $1,263,000. I'd like to point out that the challenge to this budget, and I think to most every budget, is largely driven by the electric bill rates, which have been climbing recently. And we try to predict what that increase will be, but we don't always hit the mark exactly. We do need to have a contingency on hand because revenues come in via the property tax bills in November, and we've got to pay all the costs and expenses from the period of the beginning of the fiscal year until the property tax revenues start showing up in November. So that's what we're using this contingency for. Also, because this is billed via property tax bills, our collections are subject to the compression of property taxes as part of Measure 5, which throws a little bit of a variable into, we need this much money, but we only get this much money, and predicting that is a less than exact science.
Can I ask a question while we're on it here, or you may want to hold answering my question till the next slide? I'm seeing news media reports that Portland General Electric has doubled the electricity bill in general, and I'm wondering if the amount that you're budgeting is going to be able to absorb an increase like that.
I don't think our budget's anticipating a doubling of our electric costs, and I could try to get back to you about what percentage increase we are expecting, but I'm fairly certain we're not building into this a doubling. But also, I believe those rates are, you have different rates for different kinds of customers. So some customers may be facing a doubling, but streetlights might not be facing the same kind of increase.
Terrific. Thank you. So it might be good to have an identification of what kind of rate we get, but I'm fine with moving forward with this budget rate. Thank you.
And Chair Harrington, to your question, I anticipate that we are looking at something around a 25% increase this year. That is a substantial bump, but again, that's based on discussions that our staff have had with PGE looking forward about potential rate adjustments that they may be proposing. So trying, as you say, to get a little bit ahead of that curve.
Better than double.
It's much better than double. And also, I wanted to point out that while some property owners might be seeing a significant percentage increase in their bill, it's usually a pretty low dollar increase. Somebody's bill might go from $25 to $32, which would look like a huge percentage increase, but it tends to be a pretty small number of dollars in somebody's larger property tax bill. And we are hoping that in the coming years, the contingency is going to start to level off a little bit. I think we've been trying to rebuild a contingency level to that which we're hoping to have. And we're getting closer, but I don't think we're quite there yet. Thus, the increase in the rates slightly higher than the increase in budgeted expenditures.
And I'll just say, too, as a former homeowner in the Bethany area that was covered by the service district for lighting, having those street lights all throughout my neighborhood helped make me feel safer in my neighborhood than the darkness that otherwise would have prevailed. So, thank you.
I think this is a pretty well-received service, and I appreciate the fact that we've built into the process requirement that most people who are impacted support it, because we do have some areas where somebody asks for a street light, but most of the neighboring property owners, for whatever reason, like to be in the dark, and that's okay. And so this is a self-determining process here, and people tend to get what they're hoping to get from this process. I don't have much of an update for this slide. This slide's about an initiated, added district or service area from the previous year, but it gives you an idea of where this might be and how many properties would be affected and how many streetlights would be a part of one of these neighborhood initiated services.
And these are the ones that we see as part of the annexing into these different districts as part of UGB expansion areas that are now being developed with new neighborhood applications, right?
Right, and even within the older parts of the urban growth boundary, when land divisions happen to create a new development, they're required to annex into the district and to provide street lighting with development.
And we also provide, on request, light shields for some people. We've been doing a big conversion to LED lights, and some people are asking for light shields, which reduce the undesired glare in particular areas, but it's a relatively low cost, and this program has been going along pretty well.
Is that $150 for a one-time charge? Or is
Yes, it's a one-time charge, like an installation charge. And that's my presentation. Any questions?
I was wondering if you could talk to us about what are some energy-saving initiatives, either in your district or just countywide, that can help reduce the burden of the electricity grid, and where, I don't know who funds these programs, if it's state or county. I'm just curious if you can talk about where there are initiatives to either use more energy from other sources than buying it off the grid that come in from coal.
That's a great question. I can address perhaps the things that we're doing on the county side for sure are in terms of our efficiency of the fixtures, the LED conversions. We've been partnering with PGE for probably 6 or 7 years now, working through that process. We're getting really close, I think, either this year or in this upcoming budget year, completing that transition. So the vast majority of our streetlights will now be LEDs, so the power usage is way, way lower, probably like 20% of what it used to be. So that's been a big improvement in that regard. And then I think there may be a larger question that we couldn't answer from our perspective, just about broader initiatives around increasing efficiency or looking at, as you say, other alternative sources for electricity. But PG certainly is right there trying to also do the same thing in terms of just reducing their reliance on fossil fuel.
And I want to also point out there's an added benefit with the conversion to the LEDs. Beyond the reduced electric draw, they also have a much longer lifespan, which reduces the amount that is being spent on maintenance and replacement.
Thank you. That's very helpful to understand. Is there any use of solar on the lighting that maybe draws the energy from the solar power, or use of electric batteries? I've heard of stories where after usage in electric vehicles, the batteries from the cars can be used to power things like streetlights, because the batteries still have a longer useful life of maybe another 10 years. So I'm just wondering if you're looking into those options as well.
I'm gonna say no. That sounds very Jetsons-like to me. But I appreciate where you're going with that, and that's a really interesting topic for us to be thinking about. My understanding right now is at the scale that we're working at, the battery power limitations are still going to be somewhat challenging, and the distributed nature of the street lighting system may make that a little bit complicated. But I do think that as the technology continues to evolve, those are certainly things that we'll be wanting to take a look at. Thank you.
I have a question. How long does it take from the time that somebody makes a request for a streetlight to when that's approved and to when it's implemented?
That can also vary. Yeah.
And I would think it's in the order of months. I don't think this is a particularly long process. I don't think it takes a year. But I would have to ask Stacia about that process when she gets back, if that's okay.
Yeah, so do you have much of a backlog of requests right now?
I think she's got a request or two that she's working on, but I wouldn't say that there's ever a backlog.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion for SDL 1? Thanks, Mr. Adams and Mr. Roberts.
Thank you.
So the next thing on the agenda would be public hearing, but we had some more discussion or questions about
SDL, we do SDL number 1 first.
Oh.
And then we do Washington County budget second.
Do you want to call for a motion?
Oh, so there's 2 motions?
Yes.
Okay.
So the one is in front of you.
SDL is its own district.
If you're ready to receive it, I'll make it for you.
Yeah, we need to have a public hearing.
Oh, first, okay.
Okay. All right, so we're ready for public hearing for SDL 1 then. Okay. Turn over to Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Chair Everton. This is now the time for a public hearing on the Service District for Lighting Budget. Does anyone in the auditorium wish to provide public comment on the presentation as you've heard from our Land Use and Transportation staff? Give you just a moment to raise your hand or start coming forward. Not seeing anyone in the room. Would any member online wish to provide public comment on the Service District for Lighting number 1 budget as you've heard the presentation? Give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Chair Everton.
Okay. Then we are to the point where we need a motion, correct? All right.
You ready?
Yeah.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget for the Service District for Lighting number 1 as proposed in the amount of $946,778. Sorry.
Second?
Okay. Moved by Committee Member Bolin and seconded by Chair Harrington and Committee Member Sarafa. Oh, okay. So all those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Now, we need to have we don't have slides for this, so you want us to have a public hearing on the Washington County budget and then do amendments?
Okay. So, public hearing for the Washington County budget?
Thank you, Chair Everton. I did not see anyone sign up in the auditorium. Any member of the public that is in the auditorium would use provide public comment. As you've heard the county budget over the last few days presentations, give you just a moment to raise your hand, start coming forward. Not seeing one in the auditorium. Would any member online wish to provide public comment on the county budget that you've heard or observed over the last few days? Give you just a moment to use raise hand function on Zoom. Not seeing any hands, Chair Everton.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. Please.
I would like to ask a procedural question of our county council. Should we have a motion on the table first for our county budget before we have a committee conversation about amendments? Or, given the rules of procedure, how would you like it to proceed?
Typically, that's how you would handle it.
So are you clear on that, Chair Everton?
No, can you say that again?
So typically, you would have a motion to approve, and then you would discuss amendments later on
Following.
to the budget.
Oh, okay. And so the
vote.
For the vote. So you have a motion, someone would move this, then we would open it for discussion, and that's when people would move an amendment. So you need a motion for an amendment and a second, and then we have discussion on the amendment, and then we have a vote on each amendment, and we go through that cycle until we're done with amendments.
So one vote at the end, but
Yeah.
motion.
Well, no, you have a vote on each amendment.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So first,
This is why you're Chair Harrington, you're the Washington County Board of Commissioners Chair.
well, so for the Budget Committee, some of you, well, no, we have a different committee than this morning. We Board of Commissioners live and breathe the budget all throughout the course of the year. And so this is where we really value having community members serving on our budget committee, being another set of eyes to go through the proposed budget and ask questions. Just as a matter of course, we really appreciate having our community members make the motion for approving a budget and then taking us through the process. Can we do it as committee members? Yeah, we could, but we just like it. We prefer that a community member make said motion. So procedurally, we're just looking for someone to make this motion and second it, and then we'll open up the floor to discussion and amendments.
Chair Everton, I move to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget for Washington County as proposed in the amount of $2,140,000.
It's not on. Green light's on.
Okay. Chair Everton, I move to approve, I'm making a motion to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget for Washington County as proposed in the amount of $2,142,861,811, and the levy of the permanent tax rate of 2.2484 per 1,000 of assessed value, the levy for the public safety local option levy tax rate of 0.4700 per 1,000 of assessed value, and the library local option levy tax rate of 0.2200 per 1,000 of assessed value, and the general obligation bond amount of $5,551,038.
Second.
Okay. Motion is moved by committee member Sarafa and seconded by committee member Bowen.
Now you open the floor for discussion.
Okay, let's open the floor for discussion.
Before we get into discussion, I do want to give you did an amazing job making that a motion, Jeff.
You didn't read it, that was all.
And the numbers, you got the numbers. Phenomenal job.
He's a CFO.
Thank you. It's not every day you approve $2 billion of spending.
Exactly.
Neat opportunity. Okay, discussion?
Yes, I'll start, if you will. I have two items. The first one is, I'll take as a relatively small one. For those of you who were here last year, you remember that we had, in previous years, a budget for many, many years, a discretionary fund on the Board of County Commissioners for $100,000. We moved that down to 50, and that actually came down to 30, and this year it's 0. And we did that for budgetary purposes. We now have a number of cuts, which I don't disagree with a lot of them, but I do want one specifically. Commissioner Willie kind of poked at it on page 35 of the question and answers, and it has to do with WEA. When you join organization and pay dues, they charge you dues, and that's for your participation. It's a modest amount. It's $8,600, and we're proposing $5,000. And my ask is going to be in a moment to restore it up to the $8,600 from the $5,000, taking the money out of contingency to allow them to ramp down. I think you either join an organization, pay their dues, or you don't join. So, I mean, that's a different discussion for a different day. So you either say, I don't join and I don't pay your dues, or maybe there's some other membership that you could do, or you pay the dues, whatever they come up to. There's some optics issue, and I know, Jerry, you serve on GPI. We're proposing $25,000. They're located in Portland. WEA is located, as you know, in technically Tigard, but it's right on the Tigard-Beaverton border, and is oriented to Washington County. So my ask and my discussion is that we take and restores the $3,600, very modest out of a $2 billion budget, to WEA and have that discussion next year, and you either join or you don't join. So that would be my ask, and if there's a second, then we can discuss it.
Second. Tanya, did you want to?
Yeah, my suggestion from a staff perspective, Committee Member Rogers versus contingency. Staff are comfortable taking that out of the partnership, university partnership line item. So that gap between the 5 and the 8,600 we'd reduce the university partnership line in the ECTA budget.
On page 397.
Yep, 397 is what I'm looking
So
at.
does it require an amendment then?
Procedurally, do you want to vote on the amendments, or do you want to wait and amend the motion?
I would like to get clear. I'm clear on the 3,600 that you're looking for. What I'm trying to get clear on is what line item in what section we're looking at. Are we looking at the lottery dollars, or are we looking at general fund somewhere?
Page 3.
And
Can you let me get to the page?
Yes.
And then I can clarify.
Yeah.
If everyone turns to page 397, and so this is out of the lottery program. And so what I hear Committee Rogers raising, and it shows 3 lines down: research development, West Side Economic Alliance. Actually, it's not 10,000 we've paid in dues, it's 8,600. So what Committee Member Rogers is suggesting, instead of 5,000, that be increased to 8,600 in this budget, which would mean, from a staff perspective, I would suggest that we reduce the capacity building university partnership line to reflect that amount.
Oh, there it is.
which is just 2 above the break.
So I'm a little confused.
Which would leave the capacity building, university partnerships, and internships at $3,900.
3,900? I thought you were looking at not the new support organizations.
No.
It's 7,500.
This one
That one,
right
okay,
here.
got it, thank you.
So I just want a little clarity. So if the dues for West Side Economic Alliance are 8,600, how do we think we can only give them 5,000 and say, hey, we still want to be a partner? I mean, it sounds like this is the dues, is that right? To join this organization. So you either pay 86, we either do it or we don't do it. So I don't understand how we got around to cutting it and thinking that we could do something with that money.
From a staff perspective, staff are very comfortable with the 8,600 versus the 5,000. As we look at our budget, we have to look at memberships and dues across. The Board of Commissioners has had a discussion just on the increase in AOC dues. We, staff, as most recently, I believe, as today, met with WEA and was informed of their concerns on this. So prior to even committee member Rogers, you raising this, I had an opportunity to discuss this with staff.
So I have a question back to you, Commissioner Rogers. Why did you choose that line item of the university partnerships to reduce rather than the 2 largest ones of 200,000 and 125,000? That seemed like large buckets of unspecified line items.
I didn't look across the table.
Oh, sorry, Tanya did.
It is the county administrator that determined that.
Okay,
So,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
I didn't
no,
listen
that's
to
okay. So the capacity building new support organizations, the 125,000, that specifically is dedicated to dollars going to arts organizations, Tualatin Valley Creates, and our Regional Arts Council. Those dollars previously were in what was called our Community Network Fund. In Washington County, we look at arts as economic development, so we've moved them to this area. So reducing those dollars further would not be something that I, as county administrator, would recommend, because those funds have already been reduced year over year, similar to what we've heard earlier on OSU extension. And the university partnerships, what that line item is meant to is really capacity building and helping support our smaller cities that don't have dedicated economic development teams like a Hillsborough and Beaverton. So our active team led by Matt Craigie works really closely with those cities from a capacity building. So this would be partnering with such as PSU to help bring some technical resources. So it is just reducing that line item, but it does keep our membership in whole with WEA.
Okay, thank you.
So as a technical issue, does Commissioner Rogers agree with that friendly amendment?
Well, where the source come, that's fine, yeah. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we already had a motion, so is it just a vote now? Or do we need a motion?
On the amendment.
Yeah, you would want to vote on the proposed. Yeah.
Okay.
And what is required for passing in terms of the vote? Is it a majority or supermajority or?
Majority.
It is 6.
Out of how many members do we have?
You have 10. So you have to have 6 to pass it.
Okay. Let's vote on the amendment then. So all those in favor, raise your
I
hand.
think it needs to
Do
be
we have a?
restate it.
Yeah, we need it stated as a
Restated.
motion.
Oh, okay,
And
we do need a
seconded.
motion. All right.
The restated motion is that you place, and I'm on page 397, so that we're all clear, under Westside Economic Alliance, that you change the amount from 5,000 to 8,600, which would be the dues that they charge, and that we reduce the capacity building university partnerships line from $7,500 to $3,900. That would keep the budget intact.
That's happened.
Jerry did.
Okay.
Jerry already did. Thank you.
So moved by Commissioner Rogers and seconded, moved by Commissioner Willie, seconded by
No,
No, we were just restating the motion, to be clear.
The amendment.
so
Okay, so somebody still needs to move?
Roy made the motion, I seconded.
Oh, okay.
So now we do. All those in favor,
All right,
please?
got it. All those in favor? Aye.
Any, any opposed?
Any opposed?
Unanimous, 10 of 10.
Carries.
I have a, go ahead. What are you going to,
Well, what I wanted to talk about, and I appreciate that the next one is going to be the large one. This is small. And this is no surprise to my colleagues on the board. I've brought this up several times. I am continuing to be concerned about the WCCLS, which is a library, and MISTIP, being asked to be reduced to support our activities. We did it last year. Last year's over. We did it this year. I'm hoping either one, we reverse that and take money out of either SIP or the, I keep saying contingency because we have contingency, or that at least we have a dialogue of what is going to happen in the future so that we can certainly message, and I know our CEO has been talking to the city managers. I've been talking to the city mayors, and they have a little different opinion than maybe their city managers, but they're trying to have some understanding of what's going on. And so I think a little bit of discussion would help. I've talked to CEO, the CFO, and I understand that in terms of real dollars with the growth in AV, we probably are at a good point. We're probably where we need to be. Our $150 million bond issue that the board approved for future projects really sets a really positive message. So if I had my druthers, we wouldn't be transferring anything. I understand the impact. I'm just raising it to have the discussion so it's on record that we had some conversation.
are you making a motion to restore? Is that, or you're?
I'm not making any motion. I just was
Okay.
talking about what my issue is.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion on that topic then, if, and I'll try to figure out my notes here. And my motion would be, Chair Everton, to restore the cuts in MISTIP and WCCLS and use exactly what Commissioner Rogers said, contingency of SIP.
You actually need to identify what specific amounts out of which fund.
Oh, okay. Let me get that. Where is that page?
Yeah, it starts on page, let me get it for you.
Find them. It's okay, I have it on my.
It starts over on page 9.
And if I could also correct something that Commissioner Rogers has said, it's not a $150 million bond for future projects. It's for completing the long-standing MISTIP, the remaining MISTIP 3D and 3E projects and the high-growth projects that were not able to be completed on a pay-as-you-go model. So the bonding, which we have done, allows for the certainty that city managers and mayors and city councils and WCCC is looking for in terms of completing those projects. The board has also directed staff to bring us the final MISTIP 3F process of adoption, and that includes a brand-new fund allocation as well. That includes large project match. So we're really pushing out there We've really pushed the edge of the envelope in terms of the amount of projects that we are obligating for the MISTIP program. That's not on the revenue side. I'm just, by way of explanation, I wanted to correct.
Just to comment back, that's exactly right. See, anything future to me is after December 31 of 24. So I know these projects are going to be done in the future, so that is an accurate depiction of exactly what's happening. We had a long list of old projects, and this is exactly, to the board's credit, they're going to take and have funding to perform a lot of those. So the chair's comments are exactly correct.
Thank you.
Do you need a few minutes?
And just for
no, I
reference,
found-
page
I found the
354 is
MSTIP.
the MSTIP.
Thank you.
I found the MSTIP. I lost internet for a second, so. Okay, so the motion is for the proposed FY 2024-2025 budget, there's a reduction is 5% or 2.5 million for MSTIP. And the motion is to restore that 2.5 million for MSTIP using the contingency or SIP. And then WCCLS, the cut is, bear with me for a second.
Should we bifurcate those two items, Nafisa, so we can discuss them individually? So you could just make your motion on the MSTIP and stop, and then when we get through discussing that, we could go into the WCCLS. And that's just a suggestion. That's to the chair.
I have no preference.
I have no objection to what Commissioner Willie is suggesting, so we can do one at a time, I think.
Might make for shorter motions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to repeat the motion?
I think I understood it.
Okay.
We good for the motion? Okay. Do we need a second then?
I'll second it.
Okay. Commissioner Rogers, second.
And just for clarification, again, I said I understood the motion, and I think I do, but you're suggesting we reinstate $2.5 million into the MSTIP fund, and we take that $2.5 million from the SIP fund.
Well, that
Or
wasn't in the
contingency.
motion. She said contingency.
Or SIP.
So this is where.
That's what I'm asking for clarification
I can't support
there.
the motion because you need to identify which of the two funds it's coming out of. And I want to know what the impact is by taking it out of SIP or contingency. Contingency I'm a little more familiar with, but there's some risk in our reducing contingency based upon our reserves policy. So we can't just say, and staff go figure it out. It's approval time.
Mr. Chairman, for sake of procedurally, I mean, we're meeting today, we'll pass, I'm assuming all of us want to pass the budget. But it has to come back to the board. Should the commissioner have the specificity that she's bringing up, she can always bring that up at the board meeting in which it's adopted. Or vote no on the budget. Has that option.
So you're saying that we could,
Well,
go ahead.
could we ask staff? We have many, many pages in our budget book here. We have a proposal in the proposed budget for SIP use. So after we can, and we have a motion to adopt that through the general motion. So where does that leave us in terms of a fund balance for SIP currently? For us to even have an answer if this motion makes any sense.
So I will let Mr. Munn speak to the fund balance. I will speak to operating practice. if there is a motion that is using contingency or a fund balance from any type of fund, in this case SIP, that means that you are funding ongoing operating cost with one-time resources. So if this is done, it is already starting the budget deficit going into next year of further cuts that we are going to need to make. So I want to make that point, and let Mr. Munn speak to the fund balance.
So two things. One, contingency, if the dollars are taken out of contingency and we don't restore that contingency somewhere, we won't be meeting that 4 months budget policy contingency. SIP, if you look to page 398 in your budget document, and you look at the FY, or the proposed 24-25 budget line, and scroll down until you see a number of $44,484,000. That's the amount that has not been committed in this next year's budget of SIP. So any dollars that were proposed to be used out of a SIP, in addition to what's in the proposed budget, would come out of that amount.
And could I also ask, we directed, I'm trying to make sure our bases is covered for the ERP and critical facilities. We gave direction for that, and are any of those dollars part of this 44 million?
Yes, well, they're included above in the uses. So 15 million of SIP dollars were committed to those two projects, and that's in the budget line items above the 44 million.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to make sure I remembered that correct.
Also, I'll just mention part of the fund balance and reserve contingency policy that we've been talking about. There is a section in there on strategic investment program fund balance policy, reserve policy. And one of the initiatives we've discussed with the board for the last couple of years is building that to an appropriate level. There is flexibility in that, but the more we spend out of SIP dollars now, given some of the uncertainties and the one-time in nature, the further away we get from, and we have to be careful if we use these dollars now for ongoing expenditures, they become ongoing expenditures and become a liability to the future of SIP funds.
Could I ask for I have a clarifying question to you, Mr. Munn, and that is, if we were to take the 2.5 million out of the SIP funds, and that's the 44 million line item here, that is not consistent with our policy of 4 months in reserve. Is that correct?
No, if we take it out of the contingency line item, which is in the general fund,
Oh, okay.
then that would reduce that number down to below 4 months worth of property tax.
Got it. Thank you.
That's why for a viable motion, it could really only be taken out of SIP.
Okay.
That's why
Because
I wanted to make sure.
Thank you, Chair. So in other words, we can't do it with the contingency fund. Okay. I want to make
You
sure.
want to break the policy.
And if you take it from the SIP contingency, we are using one-time funds for ongoing operations. So I just want to lift that up one more time.
So for the purposes of discussion, you have a motion and a second with the clarification that the motion is to take it out of SIP.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll say this, I won't be supporting this amendment as much as I would like to, right? Here we are with a proposed budget where really hard decisions have had to be made, and we know moving ahead, given community need and continued state mandates, that we're going to continue in future years to have tough decisions to make. So this year, I'm observing that in order to provide us with a balanced budget, our departments made up of employees are having to either eliminate entirely or cut very important workforce programs, training, our equity needs, and travel. And so that is not lost on me, that we're already moving forward with a budget with workforce impacts. In addition, as Day 2 highlighted, we know that there's this future liability that gain share will end in 2030. So we have a current commitment on gain share use, and so I feel like we can ill afford to obligate or tie the hands of future boards, thinking that we can keep doing this in the future. We also, as the board, have received the initial deferred maintenance list. It's first-time information with that initial facility condition assessment, and we need to lean into the possibility, the potential of more critical facility investments on our facilities portfolio. We also highlighted in our Day 2 discussions that we have $85 million of capital improvements that this budget year is investing in for the purposes of the entire county government. The ERP, the critical facilities, and in addition to the $150 million of bonding for the transportation projects and the over $250 million of MISDIP 3F projects. We also are moving forward with the planning for the jail community corrections expansion needs, and fingers crossed through the next, we already have earmarked, set aside the local match needed for planning a new courthouse. And each of those projects are going to require huge capital investments. So I think it's naive of us to think that we can continue to advance year over year additional resources into MISDIP. So it's a really hard choice, but one that I believe we need to do in order to keep the county government whole. We know that this is a can that prior boards kicked down the road, and they did so by not investing in an ERP, by letting the deferred facility maintenance go, and putting us in the position of having to do all this major lift work that I'm really proud of my board colleagues for leaning into. I just don't want to make the situation worse when we know we have significant liabilities ahead of us. Thank you.
So I'd like to make a comment. To me, it comes down to priorities. So when we got the, when we merged into the permanent rate, because of M5 and N50, where we took these two serial levies and integrated them with the base rate, right?
The voters did.
Yeah, whoever did it. The agreement at that time was that the MSTIP and the library were going to be continued on at the rate percentage that they originally had at this when this rate was created, and so that would be immediately off the top, right? They would be, that funding would come off the top before anything else. So what that says is that those are top priorities. They're going to stay at those rates, and they're higher priorities than anything else, and they're going to just get cut off like the cream at the top of the milk, right? So
that's not what the measure did. The measure did not obligate us to do that.
Well, I think the county obligated
That was
themselves.
the intent.
That was the intent, and that was, well, and by practice, that's what's happened, right? That's what we've been doing for years. So whether it was the intent or not, it's the practice that we had.
Well, as
right?
a voter, I don't know that that was clear. That's
fine, but what that action does is says, these two projects with this amount of money get allocated immediately at the top. So that's top priority. They get allocated before anything else. And, is that our priorities? Is that one of the things I think we really need, and hopefully we can continue to work on, is a real clear set of priorities of what core services are the most important to us, 1, 2, 3, 4, and have those tough conversations of fully funding those and trying to continue to find funding for other projects, because we can't afford everything that we're doing. This is implying that those two are the top 2 core priorities in the county if you're taking money off the top before you even allocate it to anything else. And so in that case, is that what this is that the priorities that this county and this budget is wanting to continue with, or do we want to relook at that?
These are.
Right, so you made a choice. So I think the answer is, what are the priorities of the county? What are the top priorities? Are these 2 core priorities that get the privilege of a certain amount of allocation immediately being allocated to them before any other spending is considered? I mean, I think...
And I think just to put an actual amount of what we're talking about today, this amendment is, and this is what Greg presented to us, so I'm not making these numbers. This is all information that we all have. The actual year-over-year reduction for MSTIP in the proposed FY 2024-2025 budget is 0.05%. So what we're talking about, this amendment, is actually $258,955. That's what I have in my actual notes that was provided by the staff. So it's not, I think, I appreciate what you said. I think we need to go back to the priorities and actually have a robust conversation with the cities and the mayors when it comes to MSTIP. I've heard from a lot of people, especially mayors in cities, who are wanting to go have that conversation with the board, with the county, to say, we understand that you are facing deficits. But also, the analogy that really resonated with me that cities have used is death by 1,000 cuts is still a death. We cut last year MSTIP. We're cutting this year. We also know we have challenges next year. We're going to be in the red, and we're going to need to bring that red number to the black. So how do we do that? And I think the cities and the mayors, everyone is aware. What people are asking for the county is to sort of pause and use every tool in our toolbox to sort of stop this death by 1,000 cuts with MSTIP. And this is, I think this will provide the opportunity to even the board have a bigger conversation about priorities. What Melissa brought is really good point. So I understand there are no sacred cows when it comes to this budget, but MSTIP is the reason that Washington County is celebrated throughout the state, because we don't have neglected roads. We do, right, to an extent. All of our roads are not perfect, but all of our roads are great because of MSTIP. And I think this year we have an opportunity with the unanticipated amount of funds that came into SIP to sort of pause and say, okay, what else can we do tonight? What hard choices can we make? And I think it's up to us to stop this death by 1,000 cuts.
Well, yeah, we're doing death by 1,000 cuts across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as stated before, we're at the bone. So that's the process that we used, and the request that everybody give, a flat 3%, 5% reduction means we're nibbling at everybody.
Everybody.
And included MSTS and the libraries. My only comment, I'm not advocating for or against this amendment. I'm just saying that when you look at it, there was an agreement whenever it was started, that this money would come right off the top to honor the commitment of those serial levies at the time and to keep that going forward. And we either continue to honor that request or we don't. And I think it comes back to, and it may not be something we can decide on today, but it may come back to, what are the county's priorities? And how are we going to stop the 1,000 cuts process that we've been doing and really look at what is it we want to fund and how do we fund that in a complete manner where it's, you know, it's healthy. And then what do we do with those projects and those services that we can't support anymore, and how can we find additional funding and get really creative on that? And there's going to need to be a lot of breakthrough thinking and innovation to look at that. But I think it's a priority discussion. That's all I'm saying.
So if I could weigh in. Measure 5 and 50 with the 3% cap on property taxes, our primary source of revenues, created an unsustainable revenue stream anyway, and it's just now coming to home, okay? Mm-hmm. In this particular case, and this fits for both MSTIP and WCCLS, although I didn't do any number crunching on the library side, I believe our commitment, verbal commitment, way back when, was that the 3% bump every year is what we would commit to, and anything above and beyond that stays in the general fund. Now, that's not written anywhere. It's just when I look back and I say, I want to maintain this commitment. I love this program. As a mayor, I fought to keep with the county to keep this part of it as a priority. I still have that. But I went back and I said, what happens? How much money did this generate in 2003? And then I just incrementally increased it at 3%, the measure 50 and 5 rate that was allowed every year, and said, if we had done that, how much money would we have in this fund right now? Over that 20-year period of time, that amount doubled. So these are my rough numbers. From 22 million to 44 million. How much money are we anticipating this fund will be this year? 77 million. So we're well above the 3% commitment that was implied in this process. We're taking $2.5 million out of that. Pretty small amount. So you say, okay, what will $2.5 million do for you in the transportation maintenance part of things? Well, this is an exaggerated example, but it'll fix a pothole. What will $2.5 million do to our general fund and departments? It'll reduce positions 10 to 12. So we would have to reduce services and staffing by 10 to 12 individuals or fix a pothole. So when I start doing that analogy, I think we're sustaining the MISTA program pretty doggone well. But everybody has to contribute to a budget deficit. All the departments have been doing it for the 3rd year now. We can't give exemption to 2 particular funds just because of a decision that was made by the voters 20 plus years ago. So we're committing to libraries, we're committing to transportation above the 3% level all across the board, but we have to be committed to our staff and our service levels as well. This finds that balance. That's what I think.
If I could also, in the timeliness of what, Melissa, you asked for, we've already initiated that. With the last budget year, we funded a community service level assessment. Now, it'll be the first one, but that is work that the board is doing already for us to look at what services do we offer, which of those are state-required services, which are funded, underfunded, or not funded at all by the state. And then what are the choices that we're making of our own volition? It's going to take us a lot of time, and we'll just have the first initial version. In addition, this board is making up for lost time in a lot of, in addition to that foundational piece, other foundational pieces that have been long ignored. So we are being very responsible in bringing forward the data to support our robust discussion.
And I'd like to make a comment as well. And while I appreciate the comments about supporting our cities and supporting the program, where we are today is so different than where we were in 1997. We have a fentanyl crisis. We have inflation costs. We went through a pandemic. There's just a litany I could go on and on about. And the voters that voted that in 1997 didn't have a crystal ball, nor did we at that time. And where we sit today, it's, for me personally, I am accountable as a member of this budget committee and as a commissioner to make sure that I am making the best decisions, and through my vote, I am reflecting meeting the needs of our county as a whole. So that's why I'm forced to look at this in a situation which, would I like to have lots of money? Sure, everybody does. But I'm forced to look at this from given the parameters that we are in today, not the parameters that we were in the late 90s. So that's how I approach this. While I respect and understand the work that you both have done, I will be supporting the budget as it stood previously.
I'd like to add a comment, but before I do, I'm fuzzy on what we're being asked to approve. I've heard a number of 2.5 million, and then I've heard a number of 260,000. So I'd like to get clarity on what the request is. And I'm not a fan of doing this piecemeal where you amend a budget one by one, and by the end of the day, you have $40 million of things you've approved, and you didn't expect that when you started. So I'd rather hear also what is the amount of the library amount that it would be proposed, because I think I found what the amount is, but I don't know if it's the right number.
I have it 7%, but Greg, I turn it to you to clarify the numbers for us.
Committee Member Phi, I will clarify, starting with the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program. For the proposed fiscal year 2024-25 budget, the reduction is 5%, which is $2.5 million. The reductions are taken after the assessed value growth is reapplied to the prior year transfer. I want to clarify one of the comments that was made, that this is $258,000. That is not accurate. The $258,000 reflects if it was based on last year's level. So if we would look at a flat year over year, it's a 0.3% reduction off of last year's base. And that amount is $258,955. If the intent of the motion is to restore, then it would be $2.5 million.
And then WCCLS.
Can you give us the same information for WCCLS, please?
So if we go to
Is it on page 310?
Day 2 slides, I think it was it day 1 or day 2 that the libraries were here?
I think it was
Day 2, yep, because we had slides that laid this right out.
On page 310 as well.
Okay, that's what I thought.
310?
On page 310, I see a number of where there's a paragraph that says the WCCLS operating transfer from general fund revenue reflects a net 2.6% reduction. I'm reading about a third of the page down, of $588,126 from FY 23 to 24. This reduction resulted from a projected increase of 4.7%, or $1,051,422 in general fund transfer based on projected assessed value increase. and a budget decision package reducing the general fund transfer by 7%, which is $1,639,548. So is the number $1,639,548? Okay, Commissioner Rogers is saying that's correct. Can Tanya or Mr. Munn please confirm? And
Page 310.
I'm on page 310, and I'm going to hold up my budget book for those in the room that I'm about a third of the way down.
And there's also the budget narrative that also explains this. Because we have we also had a handout on libraries that explained also the WCCLS increased allocation.
So that would be a total of 4.1 million for both requests. We can do, if we, a little bit more than that with, I'm just rounding. So that would be, if we keep it separate, that's fine. I just wanted to know the total.
So to explain the 4.7, that's the projected increase in property tax revenues. Even though there's 3% cap, you have the new growth that increases that. So that's projected to be a total of 4.7.
See.
So I think where the 258 came from MISTIP and from this, is you take your last year's revenues, you increase it by 4.7, you reduce it by your 5% or whatever that number was, and the net is, in MSTIP is 258. And I haven't done the math on this one, but it looks to me here like the net is 588. So that would be the 1,000,006 less the 1,051,051. Now, I'm just spitballing this thing, but that's where your 4.7 comes from. It's a projected property tax increase, revenue increase from both of those 3% and the new growth.
But in the handout that we received a corrected copy of, I'm not looking at MISTIP, I'm looking at libraries.
Okay, library.
You're looking at, MISTIP was corrected. It talked about how in the proposed budget, the funding transfer from WCCLS, that's West Slope, was 3%. There it is on page 2. The local option levy increased, but there was a reduction of 7%, which was a 2.6% reduction from the general fund transfer.
This letter that we got.
We can see those here.
Yep, which is what's reflected on the operating transfer in. So the 588,126 line item on page 311. Did you want to look at page 311, everybody?
I'm there.
Okay.
So we're talking about putting that 588,126 back?
I don't know, it's not my motion.
You're talking about the combined, the 1.6 and the 2.5.
Yeah, the 1.6 is if there is a WCCLS motion, we're talking about a 1.6. Yes.
Okay, all right, that's what I'm trying to confirm. Okay, thank you.
They're huddling over here to confirm that number, but that's, based on the narrative, that's my interpretation of that.
Can I ask a question directly to Chair Huntington? Is that the number, page 311, Chair? Which number were you referring to?
It's on 310 in the narrative, in the middle of the page that Jeff just read. Starts with the WCCLS operating transfer.
I thought I heard Chair Harrington say 311, page 311, and I missed the line item, but, okay.
The fourth line, on the change column, the fourth line where it says 588,126 next to the 3%.
Yeah, you're not going to see the 1.6 number anywhere on page 311.
Right.
So can I kind of recap information, just so we're all on the same page, maybe?
I see the paragraph.
So page 311 is the page of cooperative library services. The total that WCCLS is reducing in the cuts is a total of just over 1.6 million. That is a combination of operating and fund balance, reducing fund balance. The reason that is contemplated this year as a one-time is because they had some operational savings within WCCLS, and this was presented within presentation, and it's in your overview document of some staffing salary savings, other operating savings. So, but it is a 1.6 that if the intent, and I think we just have the misstep motion on the floor, but if the intent is to restore, it would be the total of the 1.6.
Thank you. So I think what I'll do is, if I can, then I'll just add some commentary that I have now that I know the numbers. I've heard a lot of pros and cons to this argument, and what resonates with me are the statements by Chair Harrington and Commissioner Willie about not using the SIP funds to fund the misstep underfunded amount in the budget or the WCCLS. That resonates with me because I feel that SIP funds should only be used for one-time events and like capital expenditures. We've seen great work come from the staff already for a CapEx review, and there will be further work that will identify how to spend or what are the real needs and how much CapEx is needed for the aging facilities within the county. And I would prefer to hold the SIP funds to use for the CapEx needs of the county, which are going to be probably higher than any of us anticipate by the time we actually need to fund them. And the SIP will run out at some point, and I anticipate that property taxes will help make up the gap of SIP funds when it does run out, but that's a long ways away, and I would rather hold our money. We're very fortunate in this county to have a great utility from our libraries and roads, and I don't want to make that trade-off right now of how to, 20 years from now, figure out how to fund those two great utility providing vehicles by using SIP funds today and have a big hole in those operating budgets 20 years from now. So I would prefer not to use the SIP funds to fund a gap and as Commissioner Willie has pointed out, if the trade-off is hurting the other departments that provide utility for the people in this county to lose staff over funding roads and libraries, I'd rather not make that trade-off today on doing that. I think the budget is giving us a really good amount of budget reductions across the board, very much equally across all the different departments, and I don't want to favor libraries and roads over some of those other departments today. I would like to, as a second point, I would like to see more funding options for WCCLS and MSTIP in the future. Like hearing this debate today, this is just one funding option. Maybe there's local option levies that we could put in front of voters to fully fund those two programs separately instead of through the current tax base today. And third, somebody talked about, Melissa Lard brought up what are our priorities. Well, the strategic plan is our priorities. You have a strategic plan to be your North Star to set your priorities. That's what we should be looking for priority setting and align our spending to meet our strategic objectives. So the work has been done in a strategic plan, so we should align priorities around that. That's my feeling.
Yeah, and just to comment on the libraries, there's the library levy that funds the libraries, and I think that's up for renewal next year, right?
Yes, and what
So
you
the libraries
heard-
are getting additional funding. I don't think misstep is, though. The only funding for that is the general fund, right? Anyway, just adding to your part.
And what you heard through the library presentation on day 2 and reflected in the handout is we have a whole process already underway for library service, common level, as well as governance. And so there will be more information forthcoming as part of the WCCLS next levy or before the next levy planning. So hopefully we'll have more to share with you leading up to the proposed budget about where we stand with that.
Chair Everton, just as a moment of just information, say the two memos that your committee has and is also available for the public, posted in budget committee packets. I want to point to two areas of those memos just for information. Within the MISTIP memo, there is a section that's called Looking Forward. So that is about long-term funding for MISTIP, which staff has had that conversation with their Board of Commissioners. Committee member Harrington had brought up WCCLS, the governance and levy planning process. That is referenced within the WCCLS memo, and it's under a heading title, Sustainable and Equitable Library Funding to Meet Community Needs. So I'll just, for information, point committee to those two areas.
Okay. Just my comment on this. It seems, I've read a couple times that we're not obligated by law to keep these same levels with MSTIP and WCCLS. We're not breaking policy, taking it from SIP. But it's a question of keeping these same values because we've been doing it, or letting the priority drive the numbers, the priorities that we have, that our commissioners have established. So does that summarize most of what we've been talking about? Okay, I'm leaning towards, if we want to have a motion, I'm leaning towards a single motion for both of these. Is anybody?
We have a motion on the floor.
We have
do.
a motion
Okay, we have-
already on the floor for MISTIP amendment.
Okay,
We have an amendment on the floor on MISTIP already.
okay.
You can modify it if you want.
But I haven't heard from other members, so I don't want to call the question because there's other members on the budget that haven't.
Well, hang on a second. When somebody calls the question, it only takes one person to do that? And, okay. Well, people are also not required to say something.
So I'll just make a comment. This is hard. In your own family, when you don't have enough income, you have to cut your expenses. And this is not an easy task. This is my third time doing this. And I would love, to fund everything. I agree with Jerry. If I have to have 10 staff versus a pothole, I think we have to look at the greater good. And I think that the staff has spent a lot of time and energy on this particular budget. I don't agree with all the things, but we can't start going through it piece by piece and making changes, or we'll be here for another 2 weeks. I think they've done a very good job of explaining why they made the changes they did. I support them 100%. I trust that they know what they're doing. And I think that we should not start making amendments and changing individual things, because I don't think that that's productive. And I think it's the commissioner's job to deal with these budget issues and to look at the greater, the answer is we need more revenue. Plain and simple, right? And we have to figure out how we can get the state to pay us. We need to look for federal grants. All those things have been discussed. Today, we need to decide if we as a committee are going to adopt this budget as presented, or are we going to piecemeal it apart, and I will not support an amendment.
I noticed here under budget analysis that it says that the fund balance will be.
Is your mic on?
Get your mic. There you go.
Pardon?
One more time.
Still off? Okay, there it is. Bottom paragraph, budget analysis, the fund balance will be strategically deployed through the levy cycle ending fiscal year 2025 through 26 for libraries to maintain current service levels and to support patron demand. Also says that.
Just push and release.
There we go. So that sounds like service levels maintained. What exactly, besides, if anything, besides the vacant positions, and the bilingual program specialist would be cut. What cut specifically?
I think that may be directed to staff response. So this is also in the slides that were presented to your budget committee yesterday. This budget, even with the cut to WCCLS, has a 2% increase to all of our partner libraries, and it increases our digital materials by 14%. So those are the increases that are within the proposed budget.
Thank you.
Sorry, what?
That means it's time to vote. She's closed the discussion. Calling the question means closing discussion, and so then we move to voting on the motion for the amendment motion.
Yeah, so it's best practice to repeat the motion at this point.
Could you?
Best practice to repeat motion.
Yeah, it's best practice to repeat the motion so you know what you're voting on.
Yeah, please.
So Clerk Moss, do you have that?
Yes, I do.
And there was an amendment to that motion, which I'm not clear of on either, so could we have the amendment first?
Yeah, so the amendment on the motion was to restore the 2.5 million in cuts to the MSTIP and to take that 2.5 million from the SIP.
That was the original motion?
That was the original amendment to the main motion. Yes.
Okay, so that's what we're going to be voting on right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So just vote. Okay.
Everybody's clear on the motion?
All right. No more questions about that? Okay, then all in favor? Okay. All opposed?
Motion.
Motion lost.
The motion is to restore the reduction in WCCLS in the amount of $1,639,548 using SIP funds. Contingency or contingency?
One or the other.
Okay, so
We went through,
If we do it out of contingency, then
We're breaking the-
we fail to have 4 months.
yeah. I know, right?
So is the motion then out of SIP? Just trying to get clarity.
We're sticking to SIP. The motion is SIP, not contingency.
Okay, are we clear on that, clerk?
She doesn't have a second.
Does she have a second?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so moved by Commissioner Fye, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Discussion? Are we?
I think we've already had the
Okay,
discussion.
I thought so.
Call
Just
for
wanted
the
to make sure.
question.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Okay. All opposed?
Seven to three. Opposed.
7-3, motion lost. Okay,
I have one more item for discussion,
okay.
Mr. Chairman. And this is a friendly discussion, nothing to do with moving budget around. Greg, I hope that in the future you take a look at that 4-month requirement and look at it to be 4.5 at least. I think you're not allowing enough carryover because you don't collect taxes till November 15th. So if you only go to November 1, which is July, August, September, October, most municipalities have problems with 4 months. They need the 4.5. So Nothing to do with this budget committee today, but in the future, you might want to take a look and say, I think the 4 isn't quite long enough. That's all.
If I can just add to that, and this is context for community members who may be watching, or budget committee members, I applaud the board and for implementation of our contingency policy, and also the work that we've done over the last 3 years so that we do have a funded contingency. This was a needed improvement, and yes, we can look if it's the right amount, but we have been working to ensure at least we have the 4 months. Looking back the last couple of years, that wasn't the case. So just as we've talked about operating in capital, we have to make sure that we have the adequate contingency in place to be solvent moving forward. So I just want to set that also as a matter of perspective of the financial and budget transformation journey we've been on.
Chair Everton, I would like to I have a question I'd like to ask the CFO, because I may need to make a motion on a point of clarification in what we approved today. So my question is, on the motion to approve the county budget, the last clause specified that we are approving the general obligation bond for $5,541,000. Sorry, $5,541,180. Sorry, hold on. We approved. We approved $5,551,038, but the wording was that we are approving the general obligation bond. Can you clarify that what we were actually should have been approving is the debt service payment on the general obligation bond?
No.
Or is it the actual general obligation bond to be issued? It's the debt. It's the payment on the bond. So that wasn't written in what I read. And then the second point I want to clarify is on page 373 of the budget book, I see an amount that looks like $5,541,188, which is $9,850 lower than what we approved. Thank you, Clerk Moss. So what I read, if you guys look at the screen, in the last clause, is that we approved the general obligation bond amount of $5,551,038. My first question is, does that cover the debt service payment of principal and interest together in the way it's worded? Yes. Okay. And then the second question is that amount correct? Because I see a difference of that versus page 373 of $9,850 difference. Because I see the proposed amount of total requirements of $5,541,188. I just want to make sure we approve the right amount and the right thing.
Yeah, I see what you're pointing out here. If you go to page 435, we actually have a worksheet that calculates 435. All the changes in our AVs, our rates, taxes that are levied. It's a summary of our assessed values. And if you'll notice, on I don't know, 2/3 of the way down, you'll see bonds. And if you scroll to the right, you'll see $5,551,038. That is the correct amount, which is also in the motion. The amount in the budget was, I'm going to say, added to the budget early on, and this calculation, along with all the other tax calculations, was done afterwards. So in the end, what's collected on property taxes to pay these bonds will zero out. So there's always a little bit of a fluctuation from year to year. What we don't want to have happen is not to collect enough. So it's kind of similar to contingency, but it's usually just a little bit more.
Okay. So we approved the higher of the two amounts that I'm reading. So does page 373 in the budget book need to change to match page 435?
No.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Good catch.
Chair Everton, before we take a vote on the motion to adopt the budget, I would just like to make some final comments.
Okay. Anything else before we do the final comments?
I just want to close the loop on the letter that the Public Health Advisory Council sent us, Tanya, I heard you say we do not need to make an amendment to this to be okay with it.
No, you do not, and I will repeat once again what the letter is highlighting, and this is the action as part of our budget transformation, moving various health and human services funds out into special funds. What the letter is referencing is an additional transfer of general fund dollars to support a starting fund balance contingency within that fund. We have consulted with our financial auditor, and this is not needed. If there are cash flow or other needs, we have processes in place through supplemental budget processes to address those during this fiscal year. That is the same as moving parks out of the general fund into its own special fund. And so I just want to underscore once again, we made sure to consult with our financial auditor in this practice. So both the CFO and I feel very comfortable with this action.
And I can add just one little comment to that. The amount of contingency we're holding in the general fund from this current year to proposed next year does not change. What's in this year's current budget is public health underneath that contingency umbrella. So because there's not a specific contingency in public health yet, a beginning fund balance, I should say, it would still be covered under the same umbrella. Now, is what Ms. Angie was saying is if we need to do something interfund at some point, which I don't see that needing to happen, the funds are still there as they are this year. They're just the expenditure side's in two different funds. And one other point, I want to, Mr. Safar, I want to, Sarafa, I want to just follow up. The reason why those numbers don't match, and Steve Kang reminded me, is that the amount that's in the revenue side on the budget is the collection amount. The amount that's in the appropriate in the wording is the levy amount, and we collect 95 or 96%. So that's the difference between the two. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. I wanted to say something really quickly. My final comments before I turn it over to Chair Harrington. This has been my favorite 2 days of financial education by fire hose, and I'm just amazed by this process and all the people who go into it, and I'm very grateful for all the work that went into it. I would love to have more time to absorb, and I don't have an answer for how that could be done, but I would love to see it happen, and I would be happy to I mean, as of today, I'm not sure I would be happy, but I'm saying if we could spread this out anyway, it would work great for me. But it's been a thrill, so thank you, Chair Harrington.
Thank you.
I also have some comments after you.
Go for it.
Okay. So yeah, I echo your sentiments. This has been great, and clearly, turned it off. And would love to be able to learn more and continue to grow in this space. So I just had a few kind of overview comments. Clearly, we talked about the fact that we have a revenue problem, and we do, and we have property tax revenue envy, and we've got to really look at different ways of getting more revenue. But we also have a spending problem, so I think we have to look at it both sides. You know, what's the revenue issues that we have? What are the spending? I agree with you, Jeff, on the fact that a strategic plan is your guiding star for your priorities. We have a good start on that, and it's taking it down to that detailed level of really what does that really mean and what are the priorities is where we're going to, and we have a good start on it, so that's great. And that'll help guide us to making our decisions. Given the process that was selected for this budget cycle with the different levels of budget proposals by each one of the departments, I think the decisions that were made were done thoughtfully and insightfully. I really appreciated the consideration of the public safety and justice ecosystem fragility and the understanding of the critical areas that needed funding in this area, and getting that attention and that support was greatly appreciated. I think one of the things we learned out of that is that we had a priority, or one of the budget priorities was to fund mandated services and objectively evaluate the service levels. One of the things that I think we learned in this budget cycle was that specialty courts proved that they are not mandated, and proved to be very important and really produce excellent results, and that they were actually more important than some of the mandated services and needed to be sufficiently supported. So I think that's great. And as Jeff said earlier, when he was validating the ERP decision vendors and plans, he said that, great organizations, he said, you need to fund innovation, and great organizations fund innovation. Innovation that gives you new ideas, methods, and products that improve or replace something. Funding the specialty courts was funding innovation and being ahead of other people and saying, this, just because this is not mandated doesn't mean that it's not as important. In fact, it was more important, and we are actually we're pathfinders in this area. So I think that was really great and brave of the committee to understand and see that, and see the innovation in that area and fund it. Speaking of unfunded and underfunded mandates, we certainly can't ignore them. We must critically evaluate them, push even harder on the lack of funding. And I know that's hard, and we've been doing it, but we have to continue to do it because they just keep coming. And we also maybe want to raise up that there are some things that aren't considered unfunded mandates, like the jail, but they really are. So getting that all on the table and really working on that and continuing to push on that is something that we should continue to do. I'm incredibly impressed on the county, on Mr. Munn having the audit come, asking the auditor to do a county financial policy audit that has already started to result in improved policies, such as the one we talked about quite a bit today, which was the contingency and reserve policy. These are going to make our projects better, our budget decisions better. The adoption of GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association best practices, is another great step for moving this organization forward. And the capital plan, the improvement plan, and the funding of the projects that are need to be under completion, and then needing to look for funding for the new projects. That's all going to help us set, the future in a better, more stable state. And then the cleanup of the general fund, creating the internal service funds, moving funds out of the general fund, all which are allowing us to have a more transparent, easier to understand data that's going to provide and help us make better decisions. So clearly it's a ton of work that was done by a ton of people, and I really appreciate it. And I love to see that, all these steps to make it even better. And as Joe, I'd love to continue to figure out how to stay involved and get more educated on this. It's been an excellent couple days, and I appreciate everything everybody's done. I want to thank you guys and thank all the people who wrote the questions, answers to the questions. And I really enjoyed getting to know the assistant county administrators and the amount of depth and breadth that they have in their organizations, and how they could come up here and present the material with depth and answer questions that take them down, to the detail and back up. It was just impressive. And the best one of those is right here sitting next to me, the amount of knowledge that you have and the ability to take and absorb all this information down to the very detail and then bring it back up and wrap it all up for us was just amazing. So thank you guys very much.
She sleeps with it.
Thank you, committee member Laird. All right.
Were there any other committee members that wanted to make any final comments?
Can I jump in? We do need to make one technical amendment, a motion for a technical amendment for the staff.
Yep.
So we do need to do that before we adjourn.
That's from this page.
Yep.
Right. Okay, so that takes the form of an amendment like the one we did earlier?
Yes.
Okay, so we need a motion.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to make? Okay. Well, we need a specific motion on the technical amendment.
I can give you some language.
Digging through the paperwork here.
Okay.
Technical amendment as specified by staff,
You
right?
can't just say, let's make a motion to that.
What he said.
You want to do it?
Oh.
I will state a motion, and then someone can say as,
So moved.
or, yep. So the motion to approve the technical budget adjustments to the fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget as outlined in Washington County Exhibit A on May 17th, 2024.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, the technical amendment is moved by Committee Member Laird and seconded by Commissioner Willie. Discussion? No discussion. Okay.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Of incorporating the technical amendment? Yes. Any opposed?
Aye.
The motion's unanimous.
What you said.
Are there any other committee members who want to make a comment before I go last?
Cheers.
I will. Thank you for everyone who participated. This has been a really enriching experience. I've learned so much, and I've been glad to contribute. And my hat's off to the staff and all your knowledge and what you've contributed here, and the department heads and assistant county administrators for bringing a lot of information to us. So it's been a fire hose of information to learn, but I've learned a lot. Thank you to Tanya and Greg over there for helping guide us through the budget process. So, and thank you to the commissioners for helping us letting us be part of your process. It's been really enriching for me. Thank you.
And one other administrative adjustment before we finish, but it has to do with SDL number 1.
Comments first?
Yeah. I just want to make that at the end so we don't close.
Then go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, and to the county staff, to all the leadership team that came and presented, and also the community members, the 5 of you that participated. I think it was a bit bumpy last year for all of us figuring out the quorum, how many votes it takes to pass and whatnot. So thank you for your participation, full participation, and really the hard questions and the comments that you provided. It even gave me an educational opportunity to even dig deep and learn more of this budget that we're about to approve. I'm just really appreciative of all of you and look forward to seeing you again, hopefully next year. And I also want to, extend thank you to Chair Harrington for all your mentorship along the side of how to navigate this parliamentary procedure and teaching us. And I'm very glad that the chair of the Budget Committee, you're sitting right next to the subject matter experts of all parliamentary procedures. So so thank you. And even extending your knowledge to me too. It's not just parliamentary, but also you've got an enormous amount of information in your head, Chair Harrington, and I appreciate you sharing that with all of us. So thank you. Just one little for our board. Our Washington County Coordinating Committee is going to have an agenda on MSTIP. And as the board rep, I will carry the vote that happened today, and the overwhelming vote that took place when it came to that topic. So, and look forward to sending that message to the committee of where the board is and where the budget committee was today. So,
I think you'll likely find that there are multiple commissioners who attend that Zoom meeting. Anyone else?
I'll just say also thank you for the support. I was hoping to learn how to be a chair, and I learned a lot, so thank you.
Well, usually I hold my comments until budget adoption, but there's so much work that's gone into this and a lot of learning along the way. And since we have a lot of our staff, or we have several of our staff problem solvers in the room today, I want to take some time to reflect on this. First, I want to say thank you to our budget committee community members. I really appreciate the time that you spend learning the proposed budget, as well as trying to spend time watching us during the course of the year. Through our new management and with these colleagues of mine on the Board of Commissioners, we've been doing a tremendous amount of foundation building and improving the culture and systems of the Washington County government. And it's not just a village, it's an army. And you're part of that. So thank you. I think you've gotten a lot of insight as to what the job of the Board of Commissioners is. You've heard reference to different programs along the way. One that we didn't spend time really highlighting is that this board directed Ms. Angie to work throughout the organization to deliver a first ever public safety and justice assessment. And it was our direction, not this committee work, that really did the assessment of where we were. And Ms. Angie helped the board develop, just like we have in prior years, our budget principles and our budget priorities in the development of the proposed budget. And I'm really proud of how all of the leadership throughout the vast portfolio that is Washington County and the depth of the different functional areas. I am really proud and grateful for all of the collaborative problem solving that you've gone through. It's incredible. You've made some hard choices in bringing options through Ms. Angie's request of different scenarios and problem solving that. It's a pretty unique situation where I don't make amendments, okay? So big kudos to you, because I have seen the result of your tremendous work. And there are lots of tags here because I wanted to have access at my fingertips. But I also want to say thank you, Mr. Munn and the full budget team. Not only did you give us the budget summary document, but you gave us the org unit detail and the fund unit detail. And what I'm holding up right here, I went through that detail to make sure I understood even more of this proposed document. And what I've printed here are just the reference pages because I was afraid I wouldn't remember, right? And so I made sure that I was prepared to go through these budget committee meetings knowing, okay, how did I paw through all of that and try to understand it before? But I would not have had that tool had you not all put it together. So thank you very much. I'm also very proud of the collaboration that went into increasing the, shoring up the workforce in the district attorney's department. That is what led us to be able to keep the specialty courts open and running and serving us, taking the learnings from that public safety and justice paper. I'm also really grateful that this proposed budget restores the capacity utilization of the Community Corrections Center. Thank you, Director Gowie-Ran, for leading that organization. But we still have case workload problems for our community corrections workforce, parole, probation, so on and so forth. Similarly, while we've made improvements in the district attorney's workforce, there are more problems there. And they're all over the organization. I don't believe we have a spending problem. I believe we have a problem with, and we've demonstrated this over the last 3 legislative cycles, how good changes have been made, but they haven't been done with the funding to help us do that. And that's reflected in a lot of this pain of this proposed budget. But we also, alongside, have a program underway to help us provide more clarity to our state legislators on that effect. We spent a lot of time here talking about MSTIP, the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program. The mayors are not unanimous. There are a lot of mayors who do understand the challenges that we have in our budget. So I'm not buying that there is a monolith there. Many of them do understand that in order for their cities to function and navigate their own budget problems, they do need us to have an assessment and taxation department that can do all the assessments, can get out all of the tax bills to all of the property owners. And we have a lot more clarity on that thanks to the Q&A documents for the 42 taxing districts that are in Washington County. And the number of elections that our very small but mighty team of 10 plus temporary staffing supports year over year. And the cost coverage from the state has gotten less and less and less and less. So we are supporting good local city government and service district government like the Tualatin Valley Water Districts, school districts, by virtue of having a sound county government. And this proposed budget continues to ensure that we are a sound county government. And it's because of the over 2,700 employees led by our terrific management team that is enabling us to do this. Once again, I am grateful for every member of this budget committee. I do hope that our CFO will send you a survey so that you can contribute ideas of how you can have more time. So it's a little less of a fire hose. I mean, we struggle too. We only have 2 weeks, just like you, to learn it all. So I'm actually quite tired. Going through this the last few weeks myself. But we've been on a journey together. We've learned through the presentations and from one another. And I do hope that you will return with us next year because we have laid a tremendous foundation, and we'll have to figure out as part of our orientation how we let you know how much further we've come in terms of that foundation building and new information that the new proposed budget enables. So thank you once again. Those are my comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair Harrington.
So Chair Everton, you have the main motion on the table still with the amendment to restore the WEA dues and the technical budget adjustment that you passed. So that main motion is on the floor.
Okay, so we don't need to restate that at this point?
Nope. He's got it in the record.
Okay. No discussion? Then let's move to a vote. We don't need a first and second. We already
did that.
All right,
yeah.
thanks. All those in favor of the motion to approve the budget and the two amendments? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Okay.
Sorry, I feel like now I have to explain to the board that didn't see. So yeah, that's what Chair Harrington.
Okay.
Yeah, she did it this way.
Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
It's unanimous. Yay!
You can adjourn.
Okay. All right.
No, there's more, but wait, there's more.
Wait, is there more?
The fun's not over yet.
Oh, okay. We're just getting started. Okay.
No, I hope
Before I recognize egg on my face, I just want to say thank you to the Budget Committee members. We've been talking on and off over several months about this as we get ready for it. I really appreciate you leaning in and learning. This is not easy. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's still a real challenge. But these are some of the best questions I've ever seen asked in 30-some years of doing this, so I just really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy it.
I hope we can continue to build this relationship and learn more and more about the county's budget. But I made a mistake on the Service District for Lighting motion. I picked the wrong number for the board to approve. So I would like to ask the committee to make an amendment to that motion, and I can give you some language. If you're curious and you're looking on your budget document on page 415, you will see the top number of $946,788. That was the amount that you approved, but that is actually, speaking of fund equity, that is the fund equity number and not the budget number. The budget number should have been on the previous page, $3,989,516. So that was my error. I picked up the wrong number when I put the motion together. So I would ask that a committee member could make a motion to amend the motion approving the 2024-2025 Service District for Lighting No.1 budget as proposed in the amount of $946,778 to $3,989,516.
So moved.
Second.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Don't do it again.
Any more while we're here? We're good. Okay.
Are we adjourned?
Anything else before we adjourn?
Take
Okay.
cookies.
Take cookies. All right.
Bang it.
We're adjourned.
Yay!